Here we go!
Yeah. So, Nintendo recently did an interview where they said they haven't finished innovating controllers yet. Now, this story interests me because you look at the awesome styles of controllers Nintendo has had throughout the decades. They are innovators when it comes to controllers. They invented the D-pad. First company to really integrate shoulder buttons onto their hardware. Like, really, the thumbstick, the innovations that they made with thumbsticks for things like the GameCube controller and even the one that's on the Wii U nunchuck. Then on the Wii nunchuck, and then we talk about the Wii remote, and that actually removed buttons and had like an actual nunchuck attachment. So we start to see that Nintendo has really taken a lot of like innovation when it comes to controller design to the point where we eventually got to where the gamepad was and the Nintendo Switch, where the console and the controllers are one and the same. Now, Nintendo says they haven't finished. The direct quote they have here is, "We are always dreaming up new things. For example, 1-2 Switch, the first game released for Nintendo Switch, we suggested that people play by looking at each other and not the screen. And for VR, we thought about how we could change not just the controller, but also the gameplay itself, and came up with the Nintendo Labo Toy-Con No. 4 VR kit. The software exhibited at this year's E3 just happened to be mostly the type that is played with the controller in hand. Looking at the screen, however, I think if you can see from the software we've created that we are always trying out new ideas." Then Miyamoto added this, "I also believe that we should quickly graduate from the current controller, this being the Joy-Con. We are attempting all kinds of things. Our objective is to achieve an interface that surpasses the current controller, where what the player does is directly reflected on the screen, and the user can clearly see the result. This has not been achieved yet. We have tried all kinds of motion controllers, but none seem to work for all people. As the company knows the most about controllers, we have been striving to create a controller that can be used with ease and that will become the standard for the next generation." And that is followed by a statement from Ko Shiota. "We have not yet invented an all-purpose controller that is unlike any of the current devices." So Nintendo has some really lofty ideas about controllers. Like, a lot of other companies have not innovated controllers the way Nintendo does. If you look at the PlayStation controller, that has gone virtually unchanged since the PS1 era. The biggest addition has been things like
DualShock 4 was
DualShock
the most innovative
4.
one, with like touchpad and some other things here and there, but it's mostly still the same.
And yes, and a lot of those features go underutilized.
Mm-hmm.
For a while, Sony played with things like the 6-axis, which was an unmitigated failure. And they haven't done a whole lot of innovating. The Xbox controller has only seen marginal form factor upgrades. They haven't really changed the button layout. They haven't really changed too much. It's really come down to, how do we make this fit better in your hand?
Ergonomics.
Yeah. But aside from that, they haven't really innovated.
How do you use the controller?
I think the closest Microsoft came to was the Kinect, and PlayStation came was the Move. But those were both in responses to the Wii remote. Like, that wasn't like innovation for innovation's sake. That was innovation to
compete.
Exactly.
To step into that arena that Nintendo's occupying by themselves.
Exactly. So, what are your thoughts on just Nintendo not being satisfied with A, the current controller, or B, controllers of past?
I think it is fine to want to continue to innovate. I think it is good to strive for upgrades, to look at what potential controllers have. However, a lot of things they say here I don't like. I don't want a controller where I don't have to look at a screen to do what I want to do, like with 1-2 Switch. I don't want to do some kind of weird button input thing when I could just press a button to do a jump so that it feels like I am jumping. It sounds like Miyamoto's thinking very, very gimmicky. And gimmicks are fine sometimes, because I think the gimmick in the Switch here is fantastic. The Switch would not work without how well integrated the controllers are into its gimmick. It's a gimmick. And I think that's great, but it's done in such a streamlined and simple way. That it doesn't even feel like a gimmick. Motion controls 9 times out of 10 feel like a gimmick. Having to do some sort of weird input with what's not a button feels like a gimmick to me. And trying to not look at the screen or something feels like a gimmick to me. And I don't think I want those kinds of gimmicks when I could just press a button. I think it'd be cool to, update the ergonomics of the Joy-Cons and make the Joy-Cons better fitting controllers. Yeah, but I wouldn't want to see too much gimmicky stuff here. I think the Switch's Joy-Cons are a peak that are great.
This actually has me wondering about the future consoles that Nintendo is already actively working on. It's not an understatement to say that when Nintendo releases a console, they're already working on the next piece of hardware, the next major piece of hardware. They are notorious for the second R&D. The second they've released a console, R&D on the next major platform has already begun. Now, this normally starts really small, like, hey, what can we do graphically? What can we do here?
It's a seed of an idea.
Exactly. But what gets to me is that I think with the release of the Nintendo Switch, I don't think we can ever go back to a world where Nintendo isn't making a hybrid console. Like, I'm sure they could, but do you want to go back to like a handheld console and a home console being separate devices? I don't think we can go back to that. And I think if you really want to integrate, if you want to keep people as excited about your hardware, this is a product that I don't want to call it a gimmick, because it's not really a gimmick that the Switch is both home and portable console. Mm-hmm. It's the crux of the system. It's the lifeblood of the system. But where do you go from here? What does changing the controllers mean? Because as of right now, the Joy-Cons are kind of perfect for this kind of hybridized gameplay style. So what does that mean for the future hardware of Nintendo going forward? Does that mean we get away from the portable aspect, or do you find a way to innovate it so that the controllers actually function better?
I could be okay with separating home and portability again, assuming that the experience I'm getting on both a separate home console and a separate portable console are worth it, and I guess makes sense in their respective spaces. I think if Nintendo were to try and take one or the other, because right now they're tackling both in one, and previously they've been tackling, one in one space and one in the other, I think they would be better off tackling the portable kind of market, because that's where they really excel as portables. Ever since the Game Boy, they've been doing better at portables than they ever have in home consoles, until the Switch where they did both. So I would say that they should try and go more into that portable space.
See, I don't ever think I want to go back to an era where I don't want to go backwards. I want to innovate what they're doing now. I like the hybridization of the portable and the home console. I love it. Yeah, I love the fact that I can play a game and then know that I have to go to like an appointment, or I'm going to go on a road trip, or I'm going to do something that would normally pull me away from the game, and knowing that I can literally undock the Switch, and that game is just, the screen's going to flip, and I'm going to be playing portably in an instant. Like that snap that Nintendo does is legitimately how quick that transition happens when you undock the Switch. And I think that's the way that Nintendo should go going forward. Now, obviously, Nintendo has different plans that we're going to discuss later. I keep saying this, but it's true. But I just don't want to go backwards. I want to go forwards. And I don't know, changing the controller design on a hybridized console like this, it could be detrimental. It could actually be a bad thing. But with that said, we should just slide into our next story. Now,